everyone. Welcome to our next episode of our More Than One video series, where we will go inside the different nationality and culture of the AAPI community. It is very important for all of us to understand the Asian American Pacific Islanders are not just one homogeneous group. In fact, there are so many different nationality and languages spoken by our 17,000 ARIA members. So today, I'm so happy to welcome Giefann Kim, who will provide us with insights into the Korean culture and homeownership. Obviously, the Koreans are another of the well-known AAPI groups that have become firmly entrenched in the US. After growing up in Philadelphia and launching his real estate career, Giefann is now a successful founding member and associate broker of Keller Williams in New York City. Giefann, welcome of your busy day to share your story with us. You're the very first second generation AAPI community member we have spoken with, and it will be interesting to learn about how your views of the Korean culture and home buying here in the US are different from that of your family when they first came here.
Well, first off, thank you for having me and thank you for doing this series. It's pretty awesome. And I'm honored to be the first Asian American to speak on this topic. So hopefully I can give a little bit of a, I guess, different perspective on some things. And hopefully I'm right about some things.
Absolutely. There is actually, we're so looking forward to your story because, majority of the people that I interview are first generation and you're second generation. So I'm so looking forward to it. So let's dive into all the questions that we have in mind. Now, Giefann, I know that you are a top student here in the NYU. So how did you get into real estate after that?
So it's a good question because I didn't have my eye on real estate. I didn't go to school for real estate. I went to school for film and TV, for journalism as well. So wanted to pursue that afterwards. But long story short, there was a lot of things that kind of happened circumstantially. And to be honest, like in my mind, it was the last thing I wanted to do. My image of what a realtor was came from my aunt, actually. She happened to be the first one to come over to the US, but later in her life, she got her license in Maryland and was a realtor. And as a child, I watched that, and she was kind of the traditional Korean realtor where you get sign, and then boom. But it kind of wasn't the turn on for me. But after, my family kind of egged me on a little bit to kind of look into it more. One of my good friends, Lawrence Lee, happened to be in the industry and in the city there, and kind of picked his brain over some drinks and really understood that it was more than that. This can be an incredible career. And, the next week he, called me up and his team had like a little opening, and one thing led to another. And I ended up being on the Braca group and fell in love with real estate. It was happen chance.
Wow, interesting. Because I know that a lot of the traditional Asian family wants their kids to be either doctors, CPA, or any. So you share also that your mom came from a wealthier background. About that too?
It was definitely, my parents definitely came from different backgrounds. From what I've learned from them as I grew up here. My mother came from a much more wealthy background, to a point where her family would help the neighbors in the community and a lot of that. Whereas my father would tell me stories growing up on the poor roads where he would walk along and pick up sticks on the street to kind of chew on for breakfast. And my mother grew up in Seoul, my father grew up in Busan. I can guarantee you that they wouldn't have met there. They both immigrated over to the US in the 70s. And then they, kind of met there. But I learned a lot about the history of Korea through them, and trying to reconnect a little bit.
I see. So can you tell me how they ended up meet here in Philadelphia? And you're born here. So how was it like when you were growing up?
They met through my aunt now, I guess, my big aunt. She kind of happened to be a colleague of my mother's back in Korea. My mother came over for a nursing career. They offered her a nursing job in Philadelphia. And then when I guess my aunt found out that my father was coming over a few years later, she kind of played a little matchmaker and kind of connected them a little bit. And that was that.
Ah, okay, okay. All right. So how's your life as a little kid in Philadelphia?
It was an interesting town. Um, even I'd say even till today, it's still filled with a lot of bigotry and segregation. The city of brotherly love is kind of ironic in that way,
Mhm.
but you'd have Irish against Italians, you know, Asians against Asians. It's just all different kind of things. So we grew up with a lot of racism, to be blunt. Um, it was something that was definitely built our character. When I say our, I mean my brother and myself, me and my brother. I mean, there was a lot of stories of things where, the common things, the name calling, the Iceland things, ching chong, this and that. But some of the more memorable ones are being chased in the streets with sticks with nails in them, getting thrown, things like that. And basically, my parents, when we come home, kind of maybe like crying, my parents would be like, "What happened?" And when we tell them, they'd be like, "You know what you got to do, right?" So we would go outside and we'd look for these kids for hours to face them, because we had to face them. That's really what it was. And ultimately, Philly is kind of rough on that end. And that's what I loved. I loved that part about New York where when I came, it's different now, but when I came to New York, it was beautifully accepting. There's so much, it was so cosmopolitan to a way where I was kind of shocked coming from Philly where I had to always watch my back and, kind of defend myself and fight for what I wanted really hard. So Philly's still very gritty. We made it work. We dealt with a lot of adversity, but um, we got through it. So
Great. Oh, it must be a tough ride. So tell me, Korean have been coming to the US for years, and they usually have a higher level of education and more affluence. Is that true?
for the most part, in terms of, I'd say that the recent waves, in the past 2 decades or so, maybe the after that, the waves after that were definitely more focused on education and job opportunities. Um, Even today, I don't think that it's anything unique. I mean, a lot of different cultures focus their attention on education and job opportunities. So I think Korea has kind of come to a point where we're almost a normal foreign investor in that sense. We're not coming for different type of opportunities like refugees, etc. Um,
Mm.
it is more oriented towards straight up investing into themselves, investing into their kids, the education.
Oh, okay. All right. So what would we notice about how Koreans want to live?
They like to live lavishly.
Really?
Just to be a little real about it.
Like the Gangnam style?
Kind of. I mean, one thing they like to do, and this is stereotyping, obviously, but this is what this conversation is about. So let's stereotype. Koreans like to infiltrate an area, um, like a suburb or whatever, or an area, and then essentially you'll see them kind of move to the skirts of it a little by little. Not that they're getting pushed out, but it's because they like to, I think, get the bigger houses a little bit more, and then the nicer cars. They like to show what they earned, like, oh, the Benz and that nice house, right?
Mhm.
That's something that is kind of cultural in my opinion. Um, you know, Koreans value luxury and brand name like before. I mean, I don't know how it is today. Actually, it's a little different, but Trump, that was a huge name. They knew Trump, they knew the hospitality, they knew the level of service they're going to get, and they paid for it. And it's also bragging rights. Hey, I got a building in it, so they love to show off a little bit.
Mm.
Asian Americans, though, Korean Americans are a little different in my opinion. The
Mm.
Korean Americans are more business oriented. They're a little bit more focused on the numbers, focused on um, kind of the reality check of what makes sense and how am I going to grow my wealth rather than spend it on unnecessary things.
Mm. I see, I see. When you talked about these luxury things, are they are they younger in the younger age or are they in the
Um, Generation above me, so I'd
Mhm.
say first generation or 1.5. Um, Maybe it was a matter of planting themselves and proving something, as you come over. But at the end of the day, at least from the circle of the generation I've spoken to and kind of talked to, and deal with, it's a different mindset. You know, there's not, I don't know, I'm sure there are, but I don't know many of my own clientele or my own Korean Americans in my circle that are going out there and just splurging.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of showing off, obviously. That's just everybody, but it's much more calculated.
I see. I see. Do Koreans like to look far ahead in their housing investments?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
I think it was very ingrained, at least from what I've seen, the
Mhm.
importance of home ownership in America. I
Mhm.
mean, home ownership in America is pretty much the American dream. It's
Mhm.
something that a lot of other countries don't even make available to their people. So this is
Mhm.
an incredible thing. And obviously, statistically, we all know through our numbers that home ownership is the best way to build wealth over generations.
Mhm.
My mother, for instance, was very, very keen on that. You know, she's one of those women. She has a perfect credit score. You know, it's like 840 something. It's crazy, but it's insane, right? But like my lenders call me up, like I've never seen such a high score. But she's always owned a home since she came. She rented, I think, when she first came to US for like 2 years, and then she saved up quickly and she bought her
Mhm.
first home. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so every home that I grew up in was owned actually, and that was a lesson that was, you know, passed on to me, and the importance of that, and the importance of building that wealth generationally.
Mhm.
You know, something that we could pass on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it's so needed. That's why, I wanted to ask you this. When you deal with all these people, do they have language barrier?
Korean Americans, no.
No.
Koreans, yes. Um, I actually happen to have built kind of a niche in New York City with Koreans.
Mhm.
Because when I started in 2006. And the funny thing is, one of the first things I did the first year I started was look up. I was looking up other, you know, Korean Americans or Asian Americans in the industry, right? Who others? And I can count on one hand the number of Korean Americans who are in real estate brokerage um, under the age of 35. Everyone
Mm.
else was the older, you know, old school. Um, it's not a coincidence why those guys aren't even around anymore. Like they, to be honest, they like they have a very hard time in New York. Let's put it that way.
I
And one of
see.
the reasons I realized is that back when I started, I wasn't actively looking for Korean clients,
Mhm.
mainly because I wasn't secure enough with my own fluency in Korean, so I didn't want to go out there and do it. But there were so many referrals that came in from attorneys or lenders or other people who told me specifically that my client is looking for a Western style, an American style broker, but it'll
Mhm.
be great if there was a Korean face to be familiar with.
Mhm.
They all told me I can only think of one guy. And whenever I spoke to them on the phone, you know, I'd preface it, not that good at Korean, is this okay? And there was only one client who there was a problem for.
Mhm.
Um, the 99 other clients either had no problem with it because they were educated enough where they spoke some English as well, or
Mhm.
they took that as an opportunity to say, you know what, perfect. My son or my daughter speaks, you know, is a Korean American. They'll get involved in the transaction. It was their way of teaching and involving their kids in this whole business as well, so
Mhm.
that they kind of forced them to do it, and they were the median. So
Mhm.
like in that way, I never had an issue with that because it wasn't about the language for them. They
Mhm.
wanted to see the work behind it. They wanted to see that it wasn't just a sign, and disappear and then collect your
Yeah.
check later. They
Yeah.
wanted to see that the work was being done, that I can,
Mhm.
you know, we knew that this was, you know, why you're buying it, etc.
Mhm.
But that was, you know, that was something that built over time. And over the past 10 years, there's a lot more second generation Korean Americans involved now. And I think that they're looking at the opportunities, you know.
This is great. This is great. I mean, I totally agree with you. In real estate, it's not about just signing the paper. It's about understanding how a transaction and how the home buying process is to make sure that the consumer know what they're entering into. So excellent. Kudos to you. So you're such a gifted man and very smart. You went to NYU and you working towards your master degree too, right?
Right.
So I wonder, are you ready for my lightning round of question?
Oh man, okay, let's do it.
So are you ready?
All right, I'm sweating. You're making me sweat.
Okay. Number one, what is your favorite Korean food?
부대찌개.
Okay, number two, what is your favorite American food?
Philly cheesesteak.
All right. Number three,
Wait,
did you play
specifically
any musical
from
instrument?
Steve's Princess Steaks, Philly cheesesteak.
Philly cheesesteaks. Okay. Number three, did you play any instrument?
Trumpet and piano.
Woo-hoo.
Well, everybody started out piano, right? We're Korean.
I know, even though Chinese too, but
Yeah, we're
I'm
Asian, right?
so, you guys are so lucky to get to learn those things. My goodness. So anyway, Giefann, you did so well. And I've been, asking our guests to teach me how to say we are family in their own language. So can you teach me how to say we are family in Korean? I know you kind of like,
All right. This is my broken Korean coming through right now. Okay. So
okay,
I
see
know
how
this
broken
one.
it
I know
is.
this one. We are family in Korean. It's quite simple actually. 우리는 가족.
우리는 가족.
So 우리 is like us, so we are. Like 우리는 가족.
우리는 가족.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Giefann. I have so much fun to talk with you. And hopefully one day I'll come to New York and see you in person again. It was really interesting on behalf of all of us at ARIA. Congratulations on your success and wish you all the best on your master degree, study. And, we are so looking forward to see you. And you're such a model to a lot of the young people. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. No, thank you so
So
much. This
as
was
I do
awesome.
all my guests, I would say that you're just amazing, but I'm not going to say in Cantonese because you don't understand anyway. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.